All right, we're looking at the transformational power of contemporary worship music and how that the philosophy brings changes, the licentiousness under the guise of grace, but also the music itself has great transformational powers because it's so addictive and so affecting to people. And many of the churches that are adopting CCM think they're removing the rock from the Christian rock, but they're actually just toning it down. It's still rock. It's soft rock. And this is what I would like for people to understand, that really, West Coast, Lancaster Baptist Church, for example, and I use them as an example because they're so influential. And I first found out about their influence overseas, particularly in the Philippines. West Coast, Lancaster's had a huge influence on the churches in the Philippines to the negative, to draw them into contemporary worship. And Pastor Chappell thinks he can hold a line, just stay there, just dabbling with it. But the next generation certainly won't. And those churches that are following his example and under his influence are not. And they're moving more and more into real full-blown rock and roll. And this type of thing, many pastors think this is not rock music, but this is rock music.
I want so much to help him, but this is something he has to do. My friend up
to you. It's an anticipated beat.
There's a way that seems so right to him.
The way they use their voices, slurring around. That's a soft rock. Graham West commented on that. He said this piece is loaded with beat anticipation, which is a major element of rock. He said the essential spiritual character of fleshly music does not change if we dress nicely or suppress sensual body movements. That piece actually makes you want to move your body. Just that little salt, that little much of rock makes you want to sway, and it affects your body. It starts affecting your body. He said if you suppress, your instinct is, if you're singing that, their instinct would be to be swaying. That's what the real rockers would be doing, because they'd simply be responding to what the music's doing to the body, and they just let it go. But they know that's wrong. You're not supposed to do that in church. And so they suppress the bodily instincts. But he says, even if you do that, it doesn't change the character of the music. If we play on classical instruments, nor if we do it sincerely as an offering to God, nor if we do it with all our hearts, nor if the words are biblical and edifying. In this case, they're quite shallow. He said, these are outward trimmings and do not change the spiritual character of the music itself, and the consequences of that character will inevitably surface. He's talking about the transformational power of soft rock. Can a man take fire in his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Can one go upon hot coals and his feet not be burned? He's talking about the power of that soft rock is going to come through. It's going to bring changes. You can't hold it down. You can't suppress it. And so many pastors are just so ignorant on this whole issue. But usually it's willful ignorance, because they're not even willing to get some presentations and look at it and really get some education. Ignorance is one thing. Willful ignorance is an entirely different thing. Many of the pastors, I'm convinced, are pleading ignorance as an excuse to use it. And they think they are not accountable since they're ignorant. But they're still accountable. The power of that soft rock. And then there's different kinds of rhythms, dance rhythms, incorporated into that music that creates that physical experience. Then there's the unresolving chords. This is more difficult to illustrate. and more difficult for a lot of people to understand, but it's a major, major element of that music. Unresolving chords. Contemporary worship music tends to use a chord cadence other than the perfect or authentic cadence. And it's not talking about the beat, it's talking about the chording sequences. And a perfect or authentic cadence always resolves back to the first tone. A weak cadence or an imperfect cadence does not resolve. It doesn't resolve, it doesn't come back and resolve itself as the traditional hymns do. And we can illustrate that with Trust and Obey. Here's the perfect chord sequence, or the authentic chord sequence. Boom, and it comes back, resolves itself, and then it goes along, and it always comes back, it's resolved, it feels real solid, real dogmatic. Yeah, it does. Music's powerful. Music is the language of the emotions, they say. And so that's the authentic cadence. And here is, see, it never came back. It never comes back. It just lingers, it hangs, and it creates a feely kind of emotional experience. It's a whole different experience, see. She's just playing with the chordings. She's just playing with the chords. Tune's the same, but she's playing with the chords, and it creates an emotional thing, doesn't it? Can't you see that? And that's just a very simplistic, basic attempt to illustrate what's happening, and how that they use the rhythms, but they use the actual chording sequences to create an environment for feelings, to create feelings, which is what they're all about, what they're seeking. Pastor Tim Kelly in Maine, he's taught music theory for probably now about 30 years, and he was deeply involved in the pop and rock before he was saved, new country rock and all. But he, in analyzing this music, says the emphasis is on the fourth chord. The fifth chord is always called the dominant chord in music, but in CCM, it is avoided as much as possible. It does not resolve. Music works like this, he says. You have a question, a phrase, and then an answer, a phrase. There is tension and then release, a resolve. This music seems to present questions with no answers, no absolutes. It is wispy and draws on the emotions with no intellectual purpose or guide. This is the philosophy of the devil. That is mysticism. Mysticism is living by your emotions rather than your mind. And that's what that music is all about. That's what rock and roll has always been about. Nobody really cares what the words are. It is the music. It is the experience. And that's mysticism. I'm going by my emotions, and I let that music stir my emotions. And they listen to the music, they listen to the old music, and it brings back those old emotions. It's part of the addictive quality of rock and roll, the emotional aspect. And you have the power of the unresolving chords, and you have the power of the sensual vocal techniques. Major element of the contemporary worship experience is the way the singer uses the voice. It's all borrowed from the pop world. All this stuff is borrowed from the pop world. The breathy style. The microphone is held extremely close. And it's all about a sexual experience. I mean, somebody's whispering in your ear. What's that all about? Well, it's about the sexual experience. See, Jock, and she is one of the prominent contemporary worship musicians, and she's just totally imitating the world. And but that has no place in the Lord's music. That kind of element, scooping and sliding. And that is, instead of hitting the note cleanly and directly, they're sliding around. It's a huge element in pop music. It always has been. This book, How to Sing for Money, back in the 50s, I believe, or the 40s, said scooping is a common practice as a swing effect. Swing effect. How to sing for money. You know, how to make music that people like so you can get money. That's what the world's music's all about, always has been. So it was created as a part of the dance music scene. And that vocal techniques works together with the syncopated rhythms to create a sensual atmosphere. It's the nightclub atmosphere.
My loved ones who've gone on before, with Jesus our Savior, we're gonna live forevermore.
So he's one of the kings of scooping and sliding, and one of the Gaither vocal band members. Here is an adaptation of In Christ Alone by Hillsong United.
Thunder the fiercest drought and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace.
So she's scooping and sliding all over the place. And that's what the world loves. The world's addicted to that. There is no pop music really today without that. The kings and queens of pop music are the kings and queens of that style. And they're just bringing that, just totally imitating that, blindly imitating that in the Lord's house. Really, these things draw attention to the singer, which is what they were always designed to do. Look at me, that's what the world's music's always been about. And you can see that even here. That girl's video is online in some church, and the comments are very enlightening. Beautiful voice. What a great voice you have. You got a great voice. You're wonderfully gifted. Love your voice. It's all about her. Well, let's have a girl get up and sing that again. And but they didn't say a thing about the Lord. And yet the Bible says, I am the Lord, that is my name, and my glory will I not give to another. I will not give my glory to another. We need to be exceedingly careful about this stuff. The house of God is not an entertainment show. There's no place for entertainment. Many pastors have said to me, or many pastors have said, that the music department is a war department. Well, that shouldn't be. Anybody that is carnal shouldn't be allowed to in any ministry in the church. Because that's carnality. If you're at war with the brethren because you're jealous of what they sing and what they get to do and you're not, and that's what it always is, then you have no part in the ministry of the Lord. Nothing. But that just shows the nature of music because it can easily be entertainment. Look at me, I'm in front of everybody. I'm singing. And it's so easily, because of our old sorry nature, can slip into that entertainment. And everybody seems to like it when people put on a show. When Christian musicians share in the glory of God, they're aping the world and are committing a great sin. And then there is the electronic modulation, which is all kinds of effects created by electronics, which you cannot do naturally. And typically, contemporary music uses full-blown electronic instruments, and they use the reverberation and echo and feedback and all kinds of electronic things that are going on. And they use all of those effects to amplify the sensuality of the music and to create this mystical atmosphere that people believe is God, feeling God. I'm feeling God. No, you're feeling the music. Now, this is an extreme example of that. The prophetic element of the charismatic movement well, this is what they do. And see, they're creating an atmosphere with electronics. There's no tune at all, but it's just all these effects and the little drums and to create an atmosphere. And they believe that's the Spirit of God, and then they could prophesy, and then they could fall on the floor, whatever, however God will lead. See that? And they just totally give themselves over to that music. And they believe that they're giving themselves over to God, but they're just giving themselves over to wherever that music will lead them. And in the midst of that, kinds of things happen. They really do, but they're not of God. And so you've got all these elements that are used to create a sensual environment, an emotional roller coaster experience. They will just manipulate the emotions of people. And 1 minute your body is just jerking to this rock and roll, hard rock and roll, and then it's almost quiet. And then atmospheric kinds of things, and then up and down. And that's what it's all about. It's about an experience. So here they are, and it's just rocking. If you just listen for a second, and they're just hammering away, hard rock, and now. And so it's an emotional roller coaster, and it's all by design to create this atmosphere so I can feel God, and God can be free to do whatever He wants to through me. Well, it's all charismatic, of course, but that's where all this music comes from. That's where the whole philosophy of this music comes from, even if the players themselves, the writers themselves are not charismatic. Most of them are, but not all of them. But their philosophy of worship is all coming from the charismatic movement. It's only 40 years old, really, this kind of thing. And most of it's a lot newer. The power of repetition also is another element. CCM has been called 7-11 music, 7 words sung 11 times. But that's just usually it's more than 11 times. And the repetition is hypnotic. If you start saying, and it's weird too, if you start saying the same thing over and over to your wife, she's going to tell you to shut up. Because you're getting weird. Right? That's just not normal. But it's hypnotic. If you don't resist it, and if you allow yourself, then it starts getting hypnotic. And that's what it's all about.
Come on, let's sing it now.
God is fighting for us. God is fighting for us. For His people. God is fighting for us. God is fighting for His people. God is fighting for us. They go on and on like that. I'm listening. So everything, all of these elements come together in a powerful contemporary worship experience like Hillsong. It's soft, and then it's loud, and they're just they're totally giving themselves over to the music. The building is dark, the lights are going, the powerful music, people are there, usually very attractive people are there, and it's a rock and roll concert is all it is. But it's all about that experience, which is why it's so silly to see independent Baptists when they first start messing with it, because they don't have a clue about what to do with it. I mean, if you're going to mess with that, go with it. Just go with it. Go to Hillsong, learn how to do it. Some independent Baptists are going to Hillsong. Right. Learn how to do it, and do it. Get your people totally wrapped up in rock and roll. Be like Robert Bax in Australia, and no holds barred. He said, rock and roll's okay, it's not wrong, we're going to use it, you ought to use it. Any kind of rock you want, or rap, or whatever, it's okay. I have more respect for him than somebody like Paul Chappell that thinks that this stuff can be, that you can dabble around with it and not be destroyed by it. Every independent Baptist church that does not take this matter seriously and does not educate itself continually and doesn't take a strict stand will be well down the emerging road within a decade or two, but it won't be two. Any independent Baptist church. Contemporary music is that powerful. It is that much the heart of end-time apostasy. Well, that's my prophecy. We'll see. Now, the pastor got up a while ago and said that every person that is involved in the music program of this church must go to the series Music for Good or Evil. So there's education going on here. And there's no reason why every pastor can't do that and continue to do that, because this stuff is going to keep changing and keep morphing. And the new people are going to keep going on the scene. So it's not something we can just, well, I got that battle won. Oh, it's going to be a continuing battle. But we can't guarantee the future, and we can't guarantee the future of any church. But we can do a lot to build the kind of foundation. It's a whole lot better to work hard to build a strong foundation than say it doesn't really matter what kind of foundation we're building. It's like child training, I believe. When I teach on child training, and when I teach that series, Keeping the Kids and the Mobile Phone Christian Home and Church, I say that, is Proverbs 22:6 a promise? Train up a child in the way he should go, and then, when he's old, he will not depart from it. Is that a promise? A lot of pastors have argued with me that that's not a promise. And usually that's based on experience, bad experience. Okay, but there's a lot of ways we can fail. David was a man after God's own heart, and he had some serious failures. So just because, and they say, boy, my deacon, he was a man of God, and he faithful to church, and he loved the truth, and look at his kids. Well, that doesn't mean the Bible's not true. Right. Who knows how that deacon might have failed. Just because he might have been a good man doesn't mean he can fail in a lot of ways with his kids. I can look back and see many ways I failed with my kids. And but I say, it's better to try hard to train them right than not try. That's got to be better. And it's the same with music, and the same with everything. We can't guarantee the success that our ministries will continue for years and years and years, but we can do our best to lay a foundation. I'm not just going to look at my kids and grandkids and look at the future and say, well, what's going to happen is going to happen, because I don't believe that. Because I believe God's given us a lot of tools to have a lot of victory. I've experienced it for 43 years. I'm not preaching things I have not lived and experienced. God's promises are true. But we're in a spiritual battle, and if we're not willing to fight the battle in every way that we know to fight the battle, then certainly the battle will be lost. This is the essence of it to me. 1 Corinthians 15:33. Be not deceived. Evil communications corrupt good manners. And building bridges to those wrong things cannot but corrupt our good manners. Now, I want to play a couple more clips, or one more clip probably in conclusion, which again compares West Coast's rendition of one of these songs, their watered-down rendition, with the real thing. Yeah, I was in the Philippines. The first time I went to the Philippines, I was with some churches, met some pastors, and was in some services and preached. And so after one of the services, one of the pastors was sitting, I was sitting in his office talking to him. He said, Brother Cloud, how'd you like our music? How'd you like our piano? I said, well, sounds like Elton John. Elton John's a homosexual rock and roller. He said, oh, sounds like Elton John. Yeah, it sounds like Elton John. You can play rock and roll on the piano. Anyway, back to this. What happened to my music?
About the power and the greatness of our Savior.
Now, this is West Coast. This is Lancaster Baptist Church, California. See if you can see anything. Now, this is the Independent Baptist rendition. This is still the Independent Baptist.
Through the storm and through the fire, there is truth that sets me free. Jesus Christ who lives in me.
Now here's the real thing. That's the real thing. That's Darlene Check and Hillsong in Australia. That's the real thing. Here's the watered down version.
Sin is broken, you have saved me. It is risen, Christ
Let me tell you something though. Young people are going to want the real stuff.
our Lord of all.
Young people are going to want the real stuff. So, here's, see, that's not hard rock either. That's Hillsong, the real thing. That's not hard rock. It's a little harder than the chapel rendition, but that's not hard rock. They love soft rock like they love hard rock. And, man, that's a dangerous world. It's an incredibly dangerous world. We didn't get tonight to the second presentation, which is the foreign spirit of contemporary worship music. But it is available online, and both of those presentations are available online. And in the Baptist Music Wars, in the book back here, I'm not sure if we have any more, but in that book, in the back on the DVD, are both of these presentations. The Foreign Spirit of Contemporary Worship Music is a frightful presentation. It is a frightful presentation. But what it is, I am documenting what that world is that they're building bridges to. I'm not building bridges. They're building bridges to. What is that world? And I don't see how any independent Baptist preacher can watch this and that other video, because this is my best attempt to give a warning. I prayed and I really asked the Lord, help me do my best, to show people what I've seen, what I see. And these two videos really are the result of that. And this is my attempt. And this is what I wish every pastor in the world would just listen to, these two. Give me that much time. And if at the end you think I haven't proven my case, well, that's your choice. It's totally your choice. Every man stands before the Lord, not before me. But I don't believe that a saved a man that loves the Lord could watch even that presentation, but certainly the next presentation, the other presentation, the foreign spirit of contemporary worship music, and not be convinced he needs to be exceedingly careful on this music issue. It's better to be too careful. You say, how careful? Well, just be too careful. If it's questionable, don't mess with it, because you'll never be hurt by that position. God bless you.